Welcome to the Navigator Podcast. Welcome to the Navigator Podcast. Today I'm with one of my best friends, Bradford Dempsey from Solutions 360. Morning, Brad.
Morning, Bradley. That's very kind of you to say.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we are typically dealing with, finances as Solutions 360 and Q360, kind of that is their forte. And I do a lot of consulting in the industry, and we're always talking about metrics. I just wanted to focus on a couple today. And one is the hesitancy of sharing project financials with employees, and kind of what does that look like, and the labor variance, gross profitability. What do you see causes that? Because again, your tool is there to do that.
Yeah, I think it really starts at the top. There needs to be a philosophy or a desire within a company to utilize financials in a way that helps increase profitability. And in a lot of cases, that really needs to be driven down to the people who have control over it. I mean, imagine you own a company that makes the bulk of its revenue and profit from running projects. Now you assign a team to a project, you expect them to do this as profitably as possible. The only catch is that they have no idea where they stand financially at any point in the project.
Right.
So they're really just managing by a list of tasks. Ultimately, it just starts with the organization having a vision of how to use financial information for the improvement of the company.
Is it what I've, working with hundreds of companies, is it ignorance? Is it fear? Is it, again, we don't know how to educate people to really understand it? What do you see? Again, you've worked with hundreds of companies also.
Yeah, I think it starts with fear, and I think the fear is based in reality, and that is if you give financial information to a lot of your employees, and if they don't have the understanding of what that information means, it can be misconstrued. It can be the idea that, well, I see gross profit on a project, obviously all this money is dropping into the owner's pockets, so why can't I have more of that? And that's the biggest, I think, pushback I see from a lot of organizations.
Well, and that's that whole piece of just understanding the difference between gross profit and net profit. And I know, we've talked about labor burden, we've talked about a whole job costing, and what I find is that, again, there's just a lack of education to have a good understanding. And what I also find is that, if we're playing a game in quotes, and that game is keep our business alive, and yet only 3 or 4 people in the company are keeping score, that's got to be painful. Where do you see a lot of companies, again, struggle with that, and what's the ramifications?
Well, I think they struggle because they don't have a formal program, or they don't have a philosophy of educating their employees. You talked about, the idea that profitability and success in a company not only creates stability, but it creates opportunity within the organization as well. And I think educating that understanding within an organization ultimately is what allows financial information to be used most effectively.
What have you seen in terms of best practices? I mean, the companies that just naturally do that, one, it has to be a philosophy, but what were some of the steps that they took to just say, no, we're all on the same team, and these are the metrics and the financials that we all need to understand and really push towards? Where do you see the shift of that, or the thought process?
It goes all the way from one extreme to the other. So we have a very large customer who has a completely open book policy. They're privately held, so you would see this kind of thing in an ESOP more often than a privately held company. But their CFO is dedicated to creating educational material for everybody in the staff. And in their world, a PIP is not a performance improvement plan, it's a performance incentive plan. So the sharing of that financial information and the sharing of where the company is and what everybody's impact is on the company is very important. That goes all the way to the other side of the fence, where people have no financial information, or if they do get financial information, the problem is it's way too late to even do anything with it. Right.
Yeah, it's really driving in the rearview mirror, or running your project. And again, 360 has the capability to do daily time tracking, and yet I still see people kind of in this payroll mindset of, well, we only share data payroll, and I'm like, project's done.
Right.
Yeah. What would you see in terms of the biggest steps that people need to take to really start to share it? And then what have you seen some of the benefits?
The first thing is there has to be a vision for that philosophy. why do we want to share financial information and what do we hope to be the outcome of that? And the outcome ideally is that the people who are on the ground and the people managing the projects who have the ability to make changes to improve profitability when it's most needed have that information and have the authority and the accountability to do that sort of thing. It could be something as simple as knowing, because I understand labor costs and I understand what it would cost extra to have something shipped overnight, expedited. Maybe sometimes that's worthwhile, maybe sometimes it's not worth taking on those extra charges. But the more information you have to make those kind of decisions, they all ripple up to a much more successful and profitable project.
Right. And I find that oftentimes there's the hourly labor, and for them, if I speed up, I get actually paid less. And so I don't think I will. I think I'll work overtime. And yet
Right.
the overtime is an opportunity cost that then impacts the next project. So it's again the holistic understanding by those people who can directly impact it.
We have to build a structure that supports the behavior that we want to see happen.
Got it. So a related one you were talking about is more of a task-based metric. Explain that to me.
Yeah, I think a lot of companies see a project as a list of tasks they have to do, but they're more of a checklist than they are true tasks. I think a task is almost like a tiny little project in itself. You have a tiny little scope of work for that particular task, but you need a budget and you need to measure your actuals against that task as well. And if you measure at that level, you have the ability to roll that up and figure out what's going on in a project at any given time with much greater accuracy.
Right. Well, and you can improve upon it. To me, if I can't
Right.
measure it, I can never understand it. And if I can't understand it, I can't improve it.
Right.
And that, again, I think a lot of the philosophies we're talking about or principles we're talking about come with a mature company. And that's really what both of us are driving towards, how to increase the maturity of our customers.
Right.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing today. I appreciate it.
Thank you.